On September 1st of 2013, a group of teenagers yelled homophobic slurs and subsequently beat a man while he was walking down the street. He sustained injuries such as a black eye, a ruptured right eardrum, which led to hearing loss, as well as dozens of bruises across his entire body. This happened right here in Cleveland, Ohio. Part of the reason you may have heard about this terrible crime was because Jared Fox, the victim of the assault, made a YouTube video that was broadcast on the news. He also made the intentional decision to put himself and his story into the spotlight of the mainstream media. He accepted this opportunity to make waves so that he could prove a point about the undeniable need for more equality and acceptance of the LGBTQI community here in Cleveland. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't really want to do this talk today. Number one, I'm kind of shy. Number two, I'm terrible at memorizing, so apologies for this. But I also felt a little bit tokenized as the queer one, and I was concerned about fulfilling that role today. You see, I'm quite anxious about speaking publicly and worry about how my statements will be perceived by others. I'm a musician and a performing artist, and because of that work, I've been in the public eye for most of my adult life. I've gained icon status as a genderqueer because of my visibility as a musician and through the performing arts. Although this label was put on me by other people, I've always done my very, very best to be a good role model for my community and beyond. But obviously, sometimes I'm criticized. So now I must hold this pressure to tell the story of a much larger group of people, not just my own. And with that pressure, I often find myself worried that I might inadvertently misrepresent members of my own community. I often find myself conflicted about speaking for a group of people who are as diverse as we are and as grossly underrepresented in the overarching cultural landscape. You see, I'm not here to speak just as J.D. Samson today. I'm here to speak for hundreds and thousands of other people. I'm here to speak for other feminists, other queers, other gender non-conforming people, and other women who have facial hair. I'm here to represent a part of the rainbow that wasn't already represented today in this discussion. Maybe I am tokenized in this role, but I consider being a token part of my activism. Making myself visible is a huge part of what I do. And nonetheless, this pressure of being the one for all is something that's very complicated to embody. Let me switch gears for a minute and share a personal anecdote from my own life as a genderqueer. My band was recently in Los Angeles on tour, and I had a couple of hours to spare after sound check. My back had been hurting, so I decided to try and find the closest massage. Now, I don't have health insurance, so usually if something hurts, I try and find a quick reflexology massage for around $20 to $50. But as my bandmate dropped me off that day, I quickly realized that this was not the kind of experience that I was accustomed to. This was a full-service spa where each customer was required to change into a special outfit and get separated by the sexes. As soon as I walked into the building and realized what was coming my way, I knew I was going to be filed into somebody else's gender category, and that made me nervous. The woman at the desk tried to explain the procedure of the spa, and I just stared at her blankly. I didn't hear a word she said. But at the end of her monologue, she said, "What size t-shirt do you wear?" And I replied quickly, "A small," even though I wear a medium. Oh no, I thought, here it is. It's time to be dehumanized, time to be put into a box, time to be shamed for who I am. All these feelings. And the fact that I was going to continue into the spa was something very difficult to admit to myself because it meant that I was being pretty masochistic, to be honest. She pointed to her right, and I followed her index finger's path like a zombie. I had two choices. I could walk out or I could keep going, and I decided to keep going. I didn't know if I was walking towards the men's locker room or the women's locker room, but all I knew was that I didn't belong in either place. So I bit the bullet, and I just kept moving. After a few minutes of confusion, I realized that I was in the men's locker room. I don't think I have to explain why. There were a bunch of naked men all over. Although I identify as a woman, I sometimes use the men's locker room to avoid conflict. So I'm not completely unfamiliar with this space. And that's probably part of the reason why I didn't turn around at this point. But I also didn't turn around because I started to think, hey, I deserve to get a massage, just like everybody else who's here. And I also wondered what kind of conflict might have happened in the women's room and decided I might be in a better place. I took off my clothes very carefully so as to not let anyone else see me. And I put on the very small t-shirt. I faced the mirror in the corner and I laughed out loud. The small t-shirt left little to be questioned. I couldn't turn back now. Everything felt so complicated, and I was at a loss for explanation. I fell victim to my own anxiety, again. So I tightened my sports bra over my chest, and I stretched the shirt out with my fists, and I arched my shoulders forward, and that was about all I could do. I bit my lip, and I headed out into the world of the naked spa. So, one step out of the locker room, and I encountered around 50 naked men, all waiting to use the sauna. I couldn't tell you one more thing about that moment, even if you asked me, because I looked down at my bare feet and I followed them across the room and up the stairs to where the massages were held. Things like this happen all the time. I begged myself to calm down, and I begged myself to relax. But the reality was today was different. Because it didn't matter who I was. It didn't matter how I treat my friends and family. It didn't matter what I did for my work. The only thing that mattered was that I was a body, and I was going to be found out, and that I didn't have backup. So I squirmed my way into the massage room and crossed my arms. I felt very uncomfortable in this moment, as you can imagine. My masseuse closed the saloon doors behind me, and she looked at me and said, "Take off your shirt." I leaned over towards her and looked her in the eye, and I said, "I'm a woman. I'm not a man. I'm a woman." Now, here it was, the moment of truth, the moment I had been dreading. This was it, no more passing. I was coming clean. So I stood there waiting to be handcuffed by the gender police, taken out in a paddy wagon and beaten, but she just repeated herself, "Take off your shirt." So I went with it. While processing all this anxiety, I decided that I was going to do this talk today. I started building a narrative around what it feels like to be differently gendered in spaces that abide by such a rigid gender binary. How I want you to hear my story. And then all of a sudden, I was interrupted by a couple of other women that were in the room all of a sudden. I couldn't hear what they were saying because they were speaking Korean, but I assumed they were talking about me, as I normally would in a situation like this. So I tried to relax and lay there and get my massage. And then I noticed more women's voices were coming into the room. I heard giggling and inquisitive inflections in their voices, and At this point, I was pretty sure they were talking about me. And then all of a sudden, tap, tap, tap on my shoulder. I heard one woman say, "Excuse me, pick up your head, please." And as I turned my head into the room, I opened my foggy eyes, and I saw around 5 women bent over and staring at me. They all started laughing hysterically and pointing at my mustache. I closed my eyes again and in slow motion put my head back into the massage table. I was paralyzed with so many feelings: shock, sadness, vulnerability, and fear. I was totally alone in this moment. I laid there and I began to cry, which I almost never do in situations like this. But it was this moment that I acknowledged that I have the opportunity and the privilege to help humanize those who are differently gendered like myself. I have the opportunity and the privilege to expose others to a more fluid expression of identity, both on the small, intimate scale of the massage parlor and the intense power of speaking on this stage today. So as she cracked my neck, I felt strong. I will be the representation. I will be the reminder, the symbol, the proof. I will be the token. I won't be perfect. No, but nobody is. I'm empowered by my tokenism because it creates visibility, and that is activism within itself. Now let me fill you in with a quick update on the spa situation. Yesterday, I received this letter. Dear J.D. Samson, we regret to hear that you had an unpleasant experience during your visit to our spa. It is our mission to treat each and every customer with the utmost respect and courtesy. We apologize if you feel that any of our staff did not meet your standard that you deserve and that we strive to provide. I have questioned and trained our service personnel so this will not happen again in the future. Thank you again for your patience and understanding. Now, let's come back to Ohio. Sorry, I mean, that's pretty cool, right? 6 months prior to the September attacks in Cleveland, there were several other physical assaults against the gay community in the same exact neighborhood. The bartender of the establishment where the said brutality took place was beaten months before Jared was. But it wasn't until after Jared's video had aired and he made his story public that the city started their sensitivity training, amped up police presence, published the story in the Plain Dealer, and broadcast it on the news. The most important reaction to me, though, is that parents and teachers started creating more awareness about hate crimes and LGBTQI acceptance in this city. This, to me, is proof that the token is certainly worth a great deal to our development as a society. Jared Fox bravely spoke in his video, "You can rest assured that I am not stopping until justice has been brought forth, and until schools are safe places where kids grow up and learn that there are people who are different than them, people like me, and it doesn't mean that we deserve to get beaten just because of who we love." Ohio's hate crime laws do not cover sexual orientation or gender identity at this time. I'm going to say that again so it sinks in. Ohio's hate crime laws do not cover sexual orientation or gender identity at this time. So this means that Jared's attack, along with the murder of 3 trans women last year, plus countless other physical assaults, are not represented or considered hate crimes by this state. Imagine the numerous crimes against the LGBTQI community that occur across your state that go unnoticed and uncounted every single year. This summer, Cleveland has the opportunity and the responsibility to host the 2014 Gay Games. 10,000 LGBTQI athletes and fans will become a part of this city for a week. And I do hope we do our part to welcome them with open arms. Even though I'm privileged enough to have seen hate through giggles and pointing and stares, as opposed to physical attacks or murder, I've still experienced what hate based on my identity and my gender expression feels like. Jared Fox and the countless other LGBTQI individuals that have been beaten and or killed because of their gender or sexuality have not been as lucky. The least I can do is go through my everyday experience with my head up and represent all of us the very best that I can. You see, one's tokenism plays a significant role at the individual level as we walk down the street or we get a massage, but some of us have the power to affect the way we teach our children the difference between love and hate. Perhaps the more tokens that we as a culture collect, the easier it is for the paradigm to shift toward more tolerance and rights for the LGBTQI community. Who knows? Maybe we can gather a pocket full of tokens and consider it change. And slowly, but surely, we might just end up with a fortune. Thanks.